John Woodleaf in the year 1619 said these words: "We ordain that this day of our ship's arrival, at the place assigned for our plantation, in the land of Virginia, shall be yearly and perpetually kept holy as a day of thanksgiving to Almighty God." This was the first Thanksgiving of the people that would eventually evolve into the United States. This was about 2 years prior to the Pilgrim situation in Massachusetts. This was the first English-speaking Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving that was initially based on prayer and gratitude, but eventually evolved into a feast with friends and family. In 1962, a guy named John Wicker told President JFK that the Pilgrims weren't the first people to have Thanksgiving. But yet, then later, they apologized, and in 1963, on Thanksgiving, JFK didn't only recognize the Pilgrims, but also mentioned the people of Virginia who died after annually celebrating Thanksgiving for a few years. JFK then retracted his words and then said this: "Over 3 centuries ago, our forefathers in Virginia and Massachusetts, far from home, in a lonely wilderness, set aside a time of thanksgiving. They gave thanks for their safety, their health, of their children, the fertility of their friends, for the love which bound them together, and for the faith which united them with their God." That's what JFK said. And then JFK was killed like 18 days after saying that. There's no connection. Just coincidence. It was just like, hey, we don't like Thanksgiving, let's kill him. No. Who knows? But anyways, Thanksgiving wasn't practiced until Sarah Hale mentioned it to Abraham Lincoln. And Abraham Lincoln then made the last week of November to be annually celebrated by having Thanksgiving. Lincoln said, "The day of thanksgiving and praise, to implore the interposition of the Almighty hand to heal the wounds of the nation and restore it as soon as may be consistent with the divine purposes." Because they were just going through the Civil War at the time, so it's like they want to bring people together. That's why Abraham Lincoln said that. In that way. That's the reason why he said it that way. But there have been numerous times that other groups of Europeans had celebrated Thanksgiving in the Americas. But of the people that were part of the group that evolved into the United States, the first Thanksgiving could be acknowledged after the starving time in Jamestown during the springtime of the year 1610. We covered that part of history in other episodes, the starving time. And after the starving time of the winter of 1609-1610, the colonists had a Thanksgiving celebration when they were brought relief and sources. And also the colonists were grateful to Powhatan for being helpful to them after the Jamestown fire in the year 1608, which they probably gave thanks to them during prayer, since the colonists were all about religion in those days. Perkins writes about how thankful he was of that they were at peace with the natives of the area at the time. But anyways, I digress. John Woodleaf arrived in Virginia along with 35 men. They had a Thanksgiving ceremony that was to be practiced annually. The first annual Thanksgiving was held on December 4th in the year 1619. These newly arriving English settlers were granted land on what is referred to as the Berkley Plantation. And many of these arriving people were to become indentured servants when they arrived in America. They were craftsmen who were to be employed under contract. And when they arrived to the Americas after usual long and difficult ride, they gave thanks to that they survived the trip. And they practiced this Thanksgiving annually until they were attacked and some of them killed by the Indian Massacre of 1622, which we did a video on. Woodleaf was elected as the first governor of the colony. Woodleaf had been in Jamestown during the starving time, so it wasn't his first trip. England was economically safe due to its textile industry until another location succeeded them, and the Englanders started to grow tobacco in England to make up for the loss of cloth making. But King James banned the growth of tobacco because he wanted it to be strictly American production that would colonize the new lands. So with the heavy tax on tobacco and growing bans, a lot of Englanders became poor, which resulted in a lot of people making their own way to America as indentured servants who were sent to America by necessity and mostly political design. And of some of these men, they were to start the Berkley 100. And why doesn't anyone refer to the English settlers as the first Thanksgiving instead of the Pilgrims? I don't know. Probably because some of the English settlers were killed on the Berkley Plantation and they couldn't talk about it. But the Pilgrims had some 600 miles north of the Berkley did the killing. And so maybe we're like, hey, those guys won the fight, so let's talk about them. The only people that survived the killing at the Berkley were the ones that got away from the Indian massacre of 1622. And people wanted to possibly celebrate the people that survived and did the killing in Massachusetts rather than the people that were killed at the Berkley 100. But remember that Chanko, the Indian boy, was the one that notified everybody. It's like, hey, get ready. Something's going to happen over here. Of the people who first celebrated the annual Thanksgiving on the Berkley 100 in America, they were in good relations with the natives up until the massacre. And Chief Open-Chaikanoff strategically had the natives visit all the plantations with a surprise attack. And it was coordinated to happen on each plantation at around the same time. Woodleaf was in England at the time of the massacre, but his family were still in America. But Woodleaf's family survived the massacre thanks to the Indian named Chanko, who warned everybody what happened. And he's like, my family is safe. They got notified, and there was some elite that survived the starving time as well. But the Berkley 100 was said to be somewhat successful. They were planting crops and building their infrastructures and buildings and all that. And Captain Thorpe actually had a house built for the Indian chief. And although the colonists wanted to convert the natives to believe in Christianity, the natives weren't happy about the English constantly knocking on their door trying to convert them. So the story goes. It all resulted in blood and death along with further bad relations. And the trend of disposal of Indian people started then. It became more popular. But that's what happened to the first people that celebrated the first Thanksgiving, the annual Thanksgiving of the people that evolved into the United States of America. So anyway, so that's your history for today. Adios.